In today's video, we're going to talk about the differences between a 165, 154, meaning we're going to talk about measurements and what they actually measure to going that way, and also the differences I've found in riding them. And as a bonus, we'll throw some of the 146 in too. So 154 and 165 are kind of our main mountain sleds. You see some 146s, but mostly these two is what you see riding in the mountains. And the front is the same. Where we get the difference is in the back. What I did was I went from the drivers and measured back from there. So we have a central point that's the same on both sleds, and then we can find out what's changed back here. The first measurement I did was from the drivers, the back of the driver, to the rear axle, the center of that nut. And again, I'm not the greatest measurer, but I use the same tape measure. I use the same on all of these. So pretty close, right? This is kind of just seeing stuff, not like you don't build stuff off of this. So on the 165, it measured 68 3/4 inches from the back of the driver, so it's round from the back of the driver to that rear axle. The 154 measured 64 inches from that driver to the rear axle. The 146 measured 58 1/4 inches. So that made the difference from the 165 to the 154, 4 3/4 inches. The difference from the 165 to the 146 was 10 1/2 inches. The difference from the 154 to the 146 was 5 3/4 inches. I was surprised, because I'd never measured this before, the difference from the 165 to the 146. I didn't realize it was that much. Next, I just wanted to see what the tunnel length was. So I went from the tunnel, the back of the gas tank, to where the snow flap cover, the brake light cover, comes up. I measured that distance. When I measured the 165 from the gas tank to the brake light cover, it was 27 7/8. The 154 was 23 1/2, and the 146, which is an outlier because we cut the tunnel on that, but it was 16 inches. That made the difference from the 165 to the 154, 4 3/8 inches different. Between the 165 and the 146 was 11 7/8. And the difference from the 154 to the 146 was 7 1/2 inches. The next measurement I wanted to get was the rails. This is probably where I had the roughest measurement, because I just went from the front of like the ski glide, the track glide, to the back. So it's kind of a rough measurement. But the 165 measured in at 67 1/2. The 154 measured in at 62 1/4. And the 146 measured in at 57 3/4. That made the difference from the 165 to the 154, 5 1/2 inches. The difference from the 165 to the 146 was 9 3/4 inches. The difference from the 154 to the 146 was 4 1/2 inches. Next, I did the mounting points, where the front of the skid mounts and where the rear of the skid mounts. This may or may not be a surprise to you, but the mounting points on the 165 and the 154 were the same, with the front measurement measuring from the driver to the front mounting at 11 inches. From the back of the driver bolt or shaft to the rear center of the rear mounting was 40 3/4. The 146 is a different chassis. So I didn't compare the numbers because these are Gen 5s and that's a Gen 4. But it measured from the driver to the first mount at about 10.5 inches, and from the back of the driver shaft to the center of that rear mount was 39 5/8. The distance from the ski tip to the back of the track, not the back of the lug, but to the back of like the track where it turns, on the 165 was 132 inches. On the 154, it was 125.5 inches. And on the 146, 119 inches. That made the difference from the 165 to the 154, 6.5 inches. The difference from the 165 to the 146, 13 inches. And the difference from the 154 to the 146, 6.5 inches. The next one I did was I counted all the lugs, and this was super annoying to do because I had to lift them up and spin the tracks. But the 165 had 71 lugs if I didn't miss any or count any twice, and the 154 had 67 lugs if I didn't miss any or count too many. I didn't count the 146 because it's a totally different track, and these are the same tracks, just different sled or different lengths. So that's the measurement, the difference that you get between the the three track lengths. But what sled would you pick? So now if your friends are like my friends, we're constantly talking about what track length we want, what does best in which scenario. So here's my opinion on what track lengths do well at. 165, in my opinion, is going to steep technical trees. It's going to do better there, in my opinion. It's going to climb better, and you'll be able to make more mistakes on it. The 154 is going to be a little bit more nimble, so you can do things like hopovers, re-entries, and bow ties a little bit easier. But you still have enough track that you can technical ride and climb. Now, 146 is going to be really good at doing hopovers, re-entries, bow ties, and don't get me wrong, you can still do some of the technical riding. In my opinion, it's not as easy. So for me, I like the 165 because what I mainly do is tree ride, the steep technical stuff. I'm not a big hill climber, but this is good for that. If you're just riding meadows and trail, you might want to look at the 146 or the 154. 165 is probably going to be overkill, but you will get stuck less. Now, with that being said, a lot of my friends are doing amazing lines on their 154s. So if you're not totally sure and it's your first sled, I would probably get a 154 just because you can do so much with it. And then you can see like, oh, I really love tree riding. So next sled I get is going to be a 165. Or I really love bow ties and hopovers and re-entries, so I'm going to get 146. I'm curious to see what you guys think. What track length you like for a mountain sled? For me, I'm a 165 guy. I build my sled for the days that are the deepest, the gnarliest, the steepest, the most trees. That's what I'm building my sled for. And the other days, if it's not great snow, yeah, maybe it doesn't ride as good as it does on those days, but I'm set up for the dream day. Brett Rasmussen gave me that advice once, and the guy's a legend, right? So I took it, and that's what this sled is built for, and the reason I got the 165 track. But yeah, let me know what track length you have or like or want, and make sure to keep coming back. We're doing lots of videos and tons of stuff. So thanks for coming, and we'll see you in the next one.